every once in a while. Oh, we're on. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Hello, everyone online. We are here to go through Daniel chapter 6. And bet you can't guess what tonight is all about. Lion's Den, yes. All right. Well, before we begin, why don't we show them what they're missing at home? Dessert? Oh, yeah. That is a delightful, perfectly balanced pound cake with a slight hint of lemon, and then the strawberry topping with some sugar and nutmeg, I think you said? Is that what you said? Yeah. Yeah, it's just...
Yummy.
So, like, last week's wasn't too heavy. It was the right amount of heavy. But it was definitely like a few bites, like, oh. Like this one, I could still do stuff after eating at least two pieces, maybe. But no, delicious dessert. Again, I think these Wednesday nights are going to be from Christine and now to Carrie. We're better known for dessert than like the Bible study is hit or miss. It's really the food that's really keeping the thing going here. Oh. Sorry, people online. Let me pull up my video so I can get all the comments. Everybody saying, oh, I wish I had that. Okay, cool. Are we ready?
Yep.
Sweet. All right, so Daniel 6. Daniel and the Lion's Den. This is the last narrative chapter of Daniel. After this one, we're going to get into some of his visions. Well, not some of his visions. And they'll jump back in time a little bit. So this is going to come, this is after the downfall of Babylon. So Persia has come in and taken over. And the king of Persia is the one who is dealing with Daniel now. And so it caps off the accounts of Daniel's life. So it's very similar in ways to the fiery furnace, in that the picture that we get, or the theme, is faith in the face of persecution. How do we remain firm in our faith when outside forces are trying to prevent us from being faithful? In both situations, we've got a miraculous deliverance from God. We've got accusations by pagan officials against Judeans. With fiery furnace was the three. With this one, it's Daniel. And then both situations ended with a royal decree proclaiming God's greatness. But there's a few differences, key differences, actually. With the Lion's Den, Daniel is not being forced to do anything. Okay, with Nebuchadnezzar, it was kind of everybody was forced. You had to pray to this idol, this statue, and his gods, whatever. This is not being forced upon him. Okay, there's nothing being forced upon him. It was actually everybody, and a decree went out that everybody was not to pray for 30 days. No one could pray to their God, whoever that might be.
Who was that with?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Oh, okay.
So the edict does not come from a Persian king or a Persian policy. So before, Nebuchadnezzar was the one who said, this is what's going to happen. This time it is a group of people who are plotting against Daniel. And what we're going to see is actually the Persian king liked Daniel. He was not happy that this was a plot against him. And God is... what God is doing here is definitely, he's bringing about a change for his people. Though there's similarities and there's differences in the what's going on here. At the very beginning, with Nebuchadnezzar, this is sort of front of the beginning of the exile, or as it's going on. And the whole point was God bringing his people through this to kind of refine them, to build up their faith. With Daniel here at the very end of captivity, this is God kind of finishing things up. And we're going to see how Daniel even approaches it. There's a little bit of a difference with what's going on here. All right, so the only thing to get into is who we're talking about. We got Cyrus the king. Okay, so for the bulk of this, we're going to be talking about, the king that we're going to be hearing about is Darius the Mede. We got him at the very end of last week, where he was the one who came in. He was about 62 years old and conquered Babylon. So this is all fine and nice, except that for a long time, and still critical scholars point out this as a glaring problem with Daniel. And that is because no person bearing this name has ever been referenced, established as having taken over Babylon at the end of the reign of King Nabonidus. There were guys named Darius, but no one matching this description is ever in any extra biblical literature. Okay, this is a big question mark because Darius, according to outside or all accounts, was not the one who conquered Babylon. Now Cyrus, the Persian king, he was king of Persia at this time. So we've got Cyrus the king, who was king of Persia, but now Daniel brings up this Darius the Mede guy. And so because of that, a lot of scholarly criticism says, well, clearly this guy is made up, or at the very least, he's an amalgam of different people. He's a fiction. Therefore, all of Daniel chapter 6 is a fiction. You can't trust it, blah, 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 blah. Besides the fact that there's miracles, and scholars don't like miracles. Well, maybe that's not fair. Critical biblical scholars don't like miracles. So we have an issue here. Not really an issue, though, because as we well know with a lot of people, and especially throughout Scripture, are known by two different names, okay? And the fun thing is that there is I forget the Jewish historian, way back when, anyway, and he wasn't the only one to mention this, that Cyrus, the king of Persia, was not always named Cyrus. This is not his birth name. Now, they don't give his birth name. All that they say is this was not his original name. Well, funny thing, Cyrus was about 62 years old when Babylon fell. His father was Persian. His mother, guess what she was? Mede, yes. So we actually have a situation where basically this very well might be his original name. And what we're going to get in Daniel actually is throughout all of Daniel chapter 6, he talks about Darius, King Darius. And at the very end, he says Darius and then moves to Cyrus. So it seems to be that even Daniel is kind of linking that a little bit, but don't be thrown off by talking about Darius, and then it talks about Cyrus, same guy. Peter was not always named Peter. Paul was not always named Paul. Israel or Jacob wasn't always, or Israel wasn't always named Israel. So we get all of that. So don't get thrown off by that, and you'll be fine. All right, we're good? Sweet. Then let's dive in. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account, so that the king might suffer no loss. Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. All right, so Darius, it pleased him to set up these 120 satraps. Now, I think we talked about before, I think it was my mom. A satrap is like a provincial governor. And honestly, officially, it could be like a governor, but in this usage, it could just refer to any government official, whether it's a governor, whether it's a clerk, whether it's a meter maid, whatever. We've got a whole variety of possibilities. So it pleased him to set 120 officials out there to handle Babylon, which makes sense because, following a conquest, got to set up shop. And especially you want to make sure this new kingdom that is part of yours now is running according to the way you want it to run. So he puts his own people in charge. Makes sense. Now we do see that Daniel, as he often is singled out as very distinctive. He's one of 3, so you've got 120 set out, but then 3 guys are put in charge of all of them, and Daniel is one of these guys. And we see that he was distinguished above all other high officials because an excellent spirit was in him. This is similar to how he's described by Nebuchadnezzar, by Belshazzar's mom, that he had the spirit of the gods in him. So this is a common thread. Everybody recognizes that there's something special about Daniel. Even to the point that the king was planning to set him over the whole kingdom. So Daniel is, once again, he's the guy, and he's an old guy now. He's very possibly, pushing 80s and 90s, depending on when he goes into exile. So he's no longer a teenager like he was at the beginning. He's a wise old man at this point. Questions about that? Easy. All right, next slide, 4 and 5. He's busy eating shortcake over there. It's awesome. Then the high officials and the satraps sought to find ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom. But they could find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any ground for complaint against Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God." So, Daniel is too awesome. He's too good. He obeys. He's loyal. He obeys the laws of King Darius. He's faithful to him, or loyal to him, rather. They can find no fault with him. So they want to screw him up somehow. So they figure, shows you just how much they know about Daniel. Because they say, well, maybe we can get him caught up involving some transgression against his law, of his God. It's like, okay, good luck with that. So they don't quite get it, but they're trying to plot against him. So likely, ambition, jealousy, what have you. Daniel's faithfulness is on display here. Okay. So they recognize his faithfulness. So it is kind of established then that Daniel practices his faith very much in the public. He does not hide anything. Like everyone knows, he is a faithful Judean. And certainly the stories of his life probably have, people have heard, so they know the stories about the guy. But they know that he is a faithful guy, and they know that he's a practicing Judean. So they're trying to hatch a plan. Questions, comments? See, this is easy at the beginning. It'll build a little bit here. There we go. Next slide, verses 6 through 9. Then these high officials and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, "O King Darius, live forever. All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction, that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign a document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked." Therefore, King Darius signed the document and the injunction. All right. So, first off, they clearly are going a little beyond, because they say, we're all agreed on this. Daniel is not included in this agreement, even though he is one of the 3 top guys. So clearly they're going around. But as far as Darius is concerned, it seems like the whole mass of them have come to him as a crowd, and they say, we're all agreed, and praise God that a room of people can agree on anything. So, hey, especially when we're dealing with government, this must have been a minor miracle. So, the plan deviates from the plan with Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? With Nebuchadnezzar, he set himself against the gods and basically said, I'm superior to all things, you're going to do this, and this is what's going to happen. This is a little bit different. They say, you know what? Okay, here's a decree. It's going to be a temporary decree. It's just 30 days. It's not a forever thing, just 30 days, and nobody is going to pray to any god or man, but only to you, okay? Or only through you. So they're not setting up Darius as a god. They're not, trying to set him up like as a pharaoh god kind of guy. They're just very time-limited sort of thing here. The interesting thing about this, and you kind of would look at this and say, well, why would Darius, this is just weird. Why would, it makes no sense. It's like 30 days, it's a weird thing. But it's actually, it's pretty shrewd. honestly. Because like with Nebuchadnezzar, he was kind of setting himself up as a god. With Darius, what they're trying to do is set him up to be almost like a priest. Okay? And if you figure what's going on here, Babylon has been conquered. Okay? And Babylon was not like all Babylonians, right? There's Judean exiles there. There's a whole bunch of different people. I mean, it was polytheistic society. You know, they didn't care who, you know, who gods, whatever, whoever you worshipped, so long as you know, said the Babylonian gods were the top guys. You can worship your own, but, you know, throw Marduk into the mix too. So you've got a whole bunch of people, different religions, different faiths. So Babylon comes in, or Persia comes in, and now, you know, how do you deal with all this? Well, you know, it does kind of make sense. Like, okay, well, we don't want any uprising. We don't want to, you know, get people all squirrely here. So, you know what? For 30 days, let's put a moratorium on prayer, worship, essentially. And you still could, but it's got to be made to him. Or at least, you know, you're appealing to him. So Darius could really pray. He was the only one who could. So it is setting himself up like this. There's also the potential of, since it is the beginning of this time, and what we're going to see, what Persia is going to do with the Judeans, is they send them back, right? And they send back all the stuff that was stolen out of the temple. Well, if they are doing the same thing, if they're kind of releasing people back to their homes, or maybe returning some of the stuff that was plundered, like the sacred things, this actually makes a lot of sense, because, you know, imagine they send back some of these sacred vessels to wherever they belonged. Well, now the people who are living in Babylon, who worship, well, now their mode of worship is gone. They can't worship, because all their sacred vessels are now like somewhere else. So if that's the case, you know, it really actually kind of makes sense. It's like, okay, we're setting him up that where it's like, you know what, you can't pray, so hey, he'll intercede for you. You know, Darius is the guy, and we're setting him up to be, you know, the main one. So it actually does, in a weird way, sound reasonable, especially with a new administration coming in and trying to keep things settled and calm. It's not a bad idea. I mean, their motives are bad, but the rationale behind it seems to make some sense, which is why I don't think he has any issue with it. It's like, meh. And especially, you know, a king over, you know, he's king of Persia. Now he's added this whole another kingdom to the mix. You know, hey, you guys administer the stuff. You just tell me what needs to be done, and I'll, you know, I'll stamp it, whatever. He's not necessarily deeply involved in the minutia. So it's
do you think
reasonable.
he was just trying to appease these officials, pretty much?
He could have been. I mean, he could have been. What we're going to see is that he doesn't trust them exactly, and I don't know if that trust is because he doesn't trust them to begin with, but once it kind of comes out that they're doing this against Daniel, he really doesn't trust them. So, and I mean, come on. Government employees, you never know.
He also has the power not to say.
I'm really going hard against government employees tonight. I really have nothing against them.
He also had the power not to sign this injunction. That's
Right.
made me wonder if maybe he was just doing it to appease those.
It's possible. I mean, especially if you've got all of them coming in and saying, "Hey, we all agree this is what should be done." So either he's just saying that, you know what, fine, whatever, or he's just looking at it like, "Hey, they obviously know something that I don't about what's boots on the ground kind of stuff. So if you all agree that this is necessary, then who am I to, you know what? Don't bother me with the details. Just I'll sign."
I would kind of wonder why he wouldn't say, "Where's Daniel?" Because that's his number one guy.
True.
Even at this point, he was looking at Daniel.
It could have been, yeah.
Kind of to run the kingdom.
Or maybe it was just one of those things where even if he wasn't there, like, well, you say you all agree. Which, I mean, hey, we've all made slight errors like that in judgment. Well, it was kind of like when your kids come to me, or you know, they come and they're like, you know, hey, you know, Mom said we could have, you know, cake. I'm like, that doesn't sound like her, but I guess if she says that you can have cake, and then I find out later, she's like, they said what?
I mean, Darius must have known that making Daniel the number one guy is going to cause jealousy among the others.
Maybe. I don't know. It could be.
Those are just questions that I'm,
I mean, there's really no, we don't have a lot of, well, we don't have really anything about his, really, I think the answer just goes to however you view, like, because my view is like, all these people, just sign it and go away. That's my approach to a lot of things, like, you want what? Fine, just take the money and go. I don't care. So that's how I would deal with it. So however else you want to look at that, it's plausible. But as far as where Daniel is and why he doesn't agree, yeah, I would attribute that to the whole mom said clause. And it's like, well, mom said we could. And then, well, okay. And then dumb dad goes along with it. Right, buddy? He's staying out of it. He's like, I'm not gonna respond. Smart boy, I've taught him well. All right. Okay. Good discussion on that part, though. All right, verses 10 and 11. Let's make some room, just in case. All right, 10 and 11. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. All right, so Daniel hears about it and goes and prays. So right then and there, that's a good pattern. Like something happens and he's like, oh boy. It's like, oh, this is going to be a mess. Pray. Go and pray about it. This is a good thing. And it notes that he prays. He had windows in the upper chamber toward Jerusalem. That's where he prayed towards. Solomon, when he dedicates his temple, has a prayer in that where he asks God to hear all those who would pray, towards the temple, towards his dwelling place. So, there's no, like, it's not like Islam where you're required to pray facing Jerusalem. But this was, Old Testament style, sure. According to Solomon, God will hear you if you're praying towards the temple. Let's see, now which way? It's actually kind of interesting that for a long time, churches no longer are necessarily built like this. But Christian churches, it used to be that they were situated so that like the back of the chancel would be facing the, oh gosh, which is it, west or east? Sun comes up in the east, right? Rises in the east. Yeah. So it used to be that I'm pretty sure. I think that's it. I always think, because when you go to the beach in California, the sunset was always cool because it would go on the water. So it's like, yes, it sets in the west. Okay. So they were always kind of facing towards the east, because that was sort of, and so all of your worship is facing that way, where the sun will rise and kind of the coming of the sun, and there's a lot of kind of cool stuff like that. Let's see, we are not. No, we're north, aren't we? No, it's okay. We could do it in the chapel.
must have something to do with North Star or something.
Yeah. There you go. We're praying towards the UP, God's country. There you go. Okay. So he's praying 3 times a day. There's no command for this. This was his practice. Prayers are mentioned as being given in morning, noon, and evening. So that's 3 times. Psalm 119 talks about praying 7 times a day. Paul encourages us to pray without ceasing. So that Daniel prays 3 times a day is just his practice. Nothing big about that. But note that it says that as he has done previously. So he's not doing anything special. Like he didn't hear the edict and realize, like, okay, they're trying to get me. And he didn't go right home and say, well then, you know what? If you're going to try and get me, then boom, open up the windows and I'm going to pray right in front of you and I'm going to do it, right in your face. He always used to do this. So basically, he hears the edict. He's like, oh, well. And he just continues living his faithful life, doing his religious practice exactly as it had been done. Although he knew that it would be viewed as an act of defiance It didn't change his path. So Daniel has always shown himself to be loyal to whatever king's law, so long as it didn't conflict with God's law. He was always a very loyal subject. So his loyalty is not in question here. But basically, this edict does put him at odds with God's law. Because, now God doesn't say you must pray to me every day. God never says, this is exactly the pattern of your prayer. But he does say, pray to me. And, of course, as living a believer, as a follower of Christ, or in his case, same thing, he understands that he has to pray. Prayer is not something that's just optional. It's not like a requirement in terms of, ooh, God's going to get you if you don't pray. But it's like, well, if you're a Christian, you pray. It's like if you're a human being, you eat and drink. Because that's part of living as a human being. It's what you need. It fuels you. So the same way, prayer keeps us, that connection going. The good question in all this is, why didn't he pray in private? Because the real easy solution was, hey, don't pray for 30 days. No big deal, right? It doesn't mean he's not a believer, right? Now, for Daniel, it would indicate he's not a believer, because he's like, no, this is how my faith is. And he would see it as, well, the human law says don't pray to any god. Well, I have to pray. My faith compels me to do it. So it's not an option that he can't do it. But then you think, well, he could have done it privately. He could have closed the window. He could have retreated back, there. Problem solved. It's like an easy solution. So.
He still was kind of in private. It was in his own home.
True. They did come by, because obviously they knew. So they made a point to come where they could see him doing it. So yeah, along with what we're saying, Daniel's not doing it to be in your face. He's not doing it in open defiance, but he's just continuing his life of worship. But still, why wouldn't he make extra, like, pulling back and hide it a little bit? God never says he doesn't say, like, your prayer is only valid if everyone sees you doing it. In fact, Gospels seem to indicate the other one, that God doesn't like when you make a big show of it. So what do you think about that?
No. Fear, love, and trust in God above all things.
Right.
That puts God above this edict.
Oh, definitely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly.
If that's what you always do, then just keep doing it.
That's what you're, oh, sure.
That's what you do.
Yeah. Let me think.
Yeah, it could have almost been like a thing where he's like, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to get in trouble now.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Right.
True. Yeah. Oh, these are all good. Good. I'm trying to think of how I want to get you to where I'm going here.
What he was doing, it seemed like he was ashamed.
Okay.
That was,
Okay. Yes, this is where I wanted to go. What is the appearance? Now, of course, we could go down the road of it doesn't matter what the appearance is. What matters is my faith. Like, appearance matters. Okay, not in terms of anything reflecting on me. Like I worry about the appearance of things, not for my sake. Great example. Well, maybe I don't know if this is a great example. First example pops in my head. One of the biggest things people talk about why they don't trust churches or pastors. What do you think one of the top 3 things is? Money. Absolutely. All the church wants is money. All pastors care about is your money. All they care about. So, do you know what my practice is? Well, I'm sure you know what my practice is regarding money here at church. I don't touch it. Literally. I've maybe handled 4 offering envelopes since I've been here. And that was just because it'd be somebody where I'm the only one here, and somebody hands it to me, and I don't want to be like, ah! So I'll take it and take it to the office. I don't touch money. I have no idea what any of you give, and I will never know. I know nothing. And especially I don't touch the money. Because, what's that? I know nothing, yes. Hogan's Heroes. There we go. I'm probably the tail end of a generation that would know that reference. But the appearance, and it's not for my sake. It's not because I look at this and say, well, I don't want somebody to assume I'm doing anything. It's for the church's sake. Because I know I'm not going to take your money. I know I can trust myself that I'll just take it, whatever. But I want the appearance so that nobody outside can point to this church and say, see, Ascension is one of those churches. It's like, I honestly, what you think about me is, I can't control that. I can do the best I can to give you an appearance, but the appearance is really for the sake of the church. So I'm not worried about that for myself. So Daniel, he could have hid it, sure, he could, or he does it in public. The appearance, though, well, like we've said, he's a high-profile guy, right? Darius wants him to be in charge of everything. He's shown himself to his fellow Judeans as he's been, well, what's the appearance before his fellow Judeans?
He'd be a coward. He'd be shrinking from the faith.
Right. And how is he regarded up until this, or?
Highly regarded.
Yeah.
As a pillar of faith.
Exactly. And why is the whole reason they're in exile?
Lack of faith.
Lack of faith. Daniel from day one has shown we can live in this world and still be faithful. And actually, and shame the world with our faith. If he could say, okay, I'm still praying, guys. But the appearance is that, oh, you're ashamed. Exactly. You're ashamed of your faith. You're willing to, try to pacify, the secular rulers here, and you hide your faith away. So it definitely gives the wrong appearance to the Judeans. So he hears the edict. He continues his prayer. What does this appearance show to his accusers?
That he's loyal, you mean?
Well, that he's loyal to God, right? That he's faithful to God, that he doesn't fear what man can do, right? He's like, lion's den? Okay. I'm going to remain faithful. So to a believer, to an unbeliever, the fact that he continues, and he's not doing anything outside of what he usually does. Just like, somebody said, all right, for 30 days, nobody goes to church, or else you get thrown into the lion's den. It's like, I wouldn't expect you guys, Monday morning, you're all marching down to church. Let's go to church. First of all, I wouldn't be here because that's my day off. So it'd be like, oh, okay, have fun. But no, all I'd say is I'd expect us all to be, well, Sunday morning, guess what we're going to be? We're not doing it like, ooh, look at us. But it's like, no, this is our faith. This is important for our people. It's important for our people, extended family, and it's important for the community to see oh, they're willing to, oh, okay. And they're not doing it in such a way that's like a whole in-your-face thing.
We're not taking out an ad in the paper.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly. Which, there are some people who do that, and it's kind of like, well, people or either society or the government says that I can't practice whatever, so I'm gonna blow it up. It's like, bring it down a notch. You can still be faithful and show that you're faithful without taking it like you were at this level, and now you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna kick it up a notch. It's like, don't kick it up a notch. Just let God kick it up a notch. He'll deal with it.
How many
You stay.
Christians were there? Were they all Christian in this?
Well, technically no.
He was about
Judean.
Oh, okay.
But they believed in the promise. So Daniel, I'm pretty sure you're going to see him in heaven. You're going to see him in the resurrection. Even though
Nebuchadnezzar,
what happened to him? Oh well,
he died.
he died. Yes.
He died. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't you remember the between you and Bonnie, you were trying to decide, heaven or hell? We had that whole thing. We already know where you.
Wherever he's at.
We won't rehash that. That was
We
fun.
won't see him.
All right, so yes, appearance is a big deal. And so he's, is he taking a stand? Yeah, but it's not, he's just doing his faith. He's just carrying on. Honestly, his reaction is mostly one of, meh. It's a really muted reaction. Nothing really changes for him. If he's worried, if he's concerned, well, he goes to prayer first, which should be our response to anything. If anything challenges us or threatens us, well, yeah, we're going to be freaked out. Pray about it. Go into God's word. Let that calm you down and be like, okay, carry on. Cool. There's no call to arms here. There's no rise up and whatever. It's just like, as for me and my house, we'll go worship God. And that's it. So yeah, appearance, very important. Yeah, it was hard being Lutheran in Baptist country in Oklahoma. Because, very much so, well, and they still have like the blue laws with all the liquor stores there, which was really annoying on Sunday. Like, if you needed liquor on Sunday, all the liquor stores were closed. Oddly enough, you could go to a restaurant and order a margarita, but that's beside the point. Anyway, there was kind of this vibe amongst Oklahoma Lutherans to be like, well, we're going to flaunt our freedom in Christ that we can drink. And so like Baptists, so we're gonna, not that we're gonna go overboard and like we're gonna get drunk or anything, but just kind of like flaunting the fact that, oh, we can drink because we know better than you. That doesn't sit very well with
Like
me.
blue laws, like blue laws out in Oklahoma.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it was.
I was there.
Yeah, and there's one sense of that, like, you know what, you do have freedom in Christ, and certainly drinking alcohol in general is not a bad thing. It's not an evil thing. However, if we're surrounded by a bunch of Christians who get really freaked out by that, is it the best look for us to be like, yeah, we can drink all we want, woo? Like, maybe, yeah, kind of. So, I was never like against, like I said, some of our best Bible studies down there were wine and cheese Bible studies. We got a lot of good discussion in those. But we never really, we didn't make a big show of it. We didn't like flaunt it. It wasn't like, we'd have an Oktoberfest every year. We didn't go like, oh yeah, we're, got all these kegs and whatever. It's like, you know what? It was always, hey, our members, we'd tell them like, hey, if you want to bring your own drink, just bring it in a cooler, have it for yourself, but that's it. So, appearance is important.
How is this the same or different from like the church in China that has to sort of go underground, or people who turn from Islam and leave their family, their country, everything?
That, my initial thought to that is the very definition of this. That, because we're talking about, although with Daniel it's kind of the same situation. He risked death. For a lot of the stuff that we deal with, we're not risking anything. We're risking maybe somebody's like, whatever. So yeah, like churches in China, churches in Islamic countries that really, that's a tough one. I'm not sure if this example applies. I think it does. I look at like when somebody points to the scripture and says, okay, well, Jesus says give everything. So when you see, give away all that you have. And I've actually had somebody come to me very stressed out about that because they felt they weren't giving enough. They could always be giving more. And this was really distressing to them. And my comment was, well, at what point does your giving harm your family? Because if you have a family with children, whatever, well, at some point, if you gave everything away, well, now you don't have anything to care for them. Well, now you've loved your neighbor, but now you've forsaken your family. So there's got to be, and I don't know where that line is, and I think it's different for everybody, whatever. And honestly, the person who is distressed about it is like, well, I think you're in the right place. You're worried about giving, cool, but you're also taking care of your family. So that line's going to be fluid. So in the same way, in these countries, I think there's got to be a line that you draw with between your public proclamation and showing people versus, well, what's best for your people, for your family, for your congregation. And that's something I struggled with a lot, just in theory. So I've never dealt with it like that degree. If you want a fun movie, I think it was a book first, but I think I've brought this up before. Silence. Great movie. Adam Driver, Liam Neeson. Who else? Someone else. About not feudal Japan, but Japan in when they were cracking down on Christian missionaries way back in the day, and there was two Jesuits who were sent to Japan to find a priest who had apostatized. He had rejected Christ. This was a big deal. So they went to discover what happened, and what they discovered was basically what they had done is they found this Christian church and were telling this priest, well, you have to recant, you have to reject, reject your Christ, and until you do so, we're killing each one of your congregation members. And at some point down the line, he says, okay. And I don't want to ruin anything, but it's a good movie. But it does present one of those challenges like, well, what would you do? And I think I've brought this up before. We had a discussion about it during a circuit meeting in Oklahoma, and it was like, well, what would you do? What if you were at a church and they lined up your family and said, you reject Christ or else we're killing the family? And the question was, what do you do? And I waffled on that one hard. Because, and I mean, the pious answer to that, the pious right answer is, no, you stand firm. You say you never reject Christ because you love Christ more than family. That's what we're called to do, to face death rather than forsake Christ. That's the right answer, right? But, like as they were broaching that question to me, and like, where would I break? And I'm like, I probably would. I felt awful saying that because I'm like, oh, that means I reject Christ. Like, well, I'm at the end of the day, I'm sinning, but I'm not sinning in terms of like I forcefully reject Christ. I'm like, because it's one of those. Well, can't you say you reject Christ, but in your heart you really don't? Like, well, but you're saying the words, and it's rejecting Christ before man. I will reject you. So it's a tough one. And plus, if you waffle and if you say, oh, I reject Christ, what as a pastor, then what example am I giving my flock, my family, whatever? So it was one of those like, oh, yeah, well, I guess maybe I would hold firm to my faith, but then it's like, oh, then you watch your family die. I'm like, oh, God. I mean, it's one of these like no-win scenarios.
Howard, you would never decide that.
Well, God, no, not God, not God. Other people. People make people decide that all the time across the world.
Egypt.
So I would, it'd be one of those situations where whatever I would choose, my prayer would be the same. I say, Lord, forgive me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Lord, have mercy. And then, but yeah, I'd like to stand here as your pastor and say, you know what, I would face death before anything. But and even with you guys, if somebody not just my family, but if somebody came in right now and lined you all up, yeah, the pious right answer is like, I'll let you all go. I got to stand firm to Christ. See ya. But it's like, yeah, how do you, like even in a theoretical sense, how do I live with that? You could say, well, you were faithful. It's like, yeah, well, you know what? I've got a really guilty conscience.
You've been preparing us all along for that.
True. I hope so. Yeah.
I've heard you say that several times.
Yeah. Basically, what a pastor does is I'm teaching you how to die. Every Sunday, every Bible study. This is such a weird thing to say. But yeah, my goal is to prepare you to die.
Hopefully not under those circumstances.
Well, yeah, ideally not under those circumstances. Ideally, it is after a long, long life where you are finally on your deathbed and you're like, I'm ready, just take me now. That's the goal.
Take me first.
You know, our people right here in this church, the Coptics from Egypt, they're dealing with that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Amelia Bacter,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They can't go back because they're
Right.
persecuting
Yes.
Christians, and especially Alexandria.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, but I'm preparing you for that kind of thing.
I wouldn't dare go over there. That'd be dead meat.
Yeah, yeah.
Right away.
Actually, fun little thing about that is I used to work with a Muslim guy back in California. He was Pakistani, and he was married to a Saudi Arabian woman, I think. I don't remember. I don't think she was Pakistani. Anyway, you know, he was a really interesting guy. I loved talking to him because it was just fascinating to learn about his faith and his practice and whatever. And he had a nice, he didn't have a glorious beard like mine, but it was maybe like there. And they were planning to go back to Pakistan or wherever she was from, maybe. Maybe it was Egypt. I don't know. To visit his wife's relatives. And because he came in one day and he had trimmed his beard real short. And I'm like, oh, hey, you trimmed your beard. He's like, yeah, I had to. I'm like, And it was because whatever their particular brand of Islam was, you had to have your beard cut a certain way or else you were identified as the wrong kind of Muslim. And that could be potentially fatal, I guess. So it was like, oh, weird. But yeah, I mean, and that's just not even a, confessing Christ thing. That's I don't know what this would say about me in the Middle East. I assume they would treat me as a king because I've got the greatest beard, but, like they do here. Anyway, what were we talking about? Death. Oh yeah, death. Preparing you to die. See, yeah, I always worry about the churches where the sermons are always teaching you how to live. And it's like, especially if I'm preaching, you guys probably have better ideas on how to live than I do, just on the basis that you have more years on me and more experience. So, I can't tell you how to live as a 60 or 70, 80-year-old, whatever, because I'm not there yet. And I love telling you guys about like, oh yeah, I hurt my knee the other day and it takes a week for it to heal, and you guys all laugh at me because you're like, oh, wait 20 years, that's going to take a month. So yeah, I got nothing really to tell you, like, this is how you live a life. Because honestly, if things are going well for you, do I really need to teach you how to enjoy that? No. I need to teach you how to face conflict or persecution, affliction, trial that leads to death. That's the one thing I'm an expert on, is death. How to face death. Because, yes, that's the one thing that I know you're going to all struggle with in one way, is facing death. We're all going to face that. And the only way to face it is with Christ, not him. So, anyway, did that answer your question? Oh my gosh.
It's tough one.
Yeah. Like I said, the right answer is you hold fast to the faith. So, are those churches doing the right thing over there by hiding away? It's like, well, that's their practice. Like, are they doing anything beyond that? It's like, well, no. The early church, met in houses. I guess they got kicked out of synagogues first. So maybe that's not the right example, because they just set up shop in the synagogue and they're like, leave! So they were forced to go to the houses. But, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, whatever they're doing seems to be working, since the church seems to be growing there and not here.
And that may be why
Yeah,
they hide. because
maybe, yeah,
How can you spread the word if you
true.
do everything
So
publicly and
that's their
get
context.
assassinated?
So maybe that works. That's for their context. That's what they're dealing with. That is the way to go. So absolutely. For ours,
Well, you're doing pretty good because you're getting more and more people here.
well, hey, that's not me. That's the Holy Spirit.
Well, you're preaching.
They could
And-
find in Acts when the church
Yeah.
When he was in prison, they were afraid, they were hiding out.
Yeah.
It was unfound.
And it kind of comes back to the whole like, well, what's the right thing to do? It's like, well, you know what? You're going to sin either way. We're always going to screw it up one way or another. So is this the right way or the wrong way? There's God's way, and guess what? He's not going to tell you, unless there's a burning bush, or it actually says right here in the Bible, okay, on this such and such a date, you are to do this. Then I'm pretty sure you're not going to get that crystal clear. This is exactly what God wants you to do. Now, He might give you that. Chances are no. He gives us freedom to choose those paths, but expects us to be faithful. So yeah, this is a very difficult area.
Daniel chose every day.
What's that? Daniel did. We got one guy, well, two, I guess, Jesus. Well, and I mean, if you want to go the Jesus road, he walked the path right to that. And we're called to carry up our crosses. So, I don't know.
Well, it's teaching us.
Selfishly, I don't want to ever know. I don't want to ever make that choice.
It's teaching us as this Daniel, everybody's getting a different take probably on things, but when it comes to lion right there, you know, if he had.
Oh yeah, we got to get to him quick.
If he hadn't had faith, he would have been laying there with the other guy.
Yeah, in all things, we want to cling to our faith. And even if it puts us in a position where we're like, I don't see the way out, we trust in God. We pray God to bless our decision, and you jump.
You made that lion's eyes where he's staring right at me.
That's right.
I keep looking up, and I thought, yeah, there he is.
All right. Okay, we can move on.
Looking everywhere.
We got 7 minutes. We could totally do this. All right. Verses 14 and 15. It goes quick.
I thought you didn't do 12.
I didn't?
No.
Oh, whoops. Wow.
Shame on you.
Okay, my bad. All right. Verses 12 through 13. We got those up? Awesome. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing stands fast, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. So, they come, they remind the king, so they're trying to set it up so ironclad, king can't get out of it. Because they know what the king thinks of Daniel. They know that he wants Daniel to be in charge. So they remind him, this is the decree you made, right? And you said this was going to happen, right? He's like, oh, yeah. And it can't be changed, right? Oh, yeah, it can't be changed. Daniel's a stinker. He's well, and then they don't even, before they get to the accusation, they're kind of, these are a bunch of jerks, all right? Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah. So he's the top guy. Yeah. He's the top, he's the guy in charge and one who's likely to be in charge. He's just one of those exiles from Judah. Meh. A little anti-Semitic, maybe. So one of those exiles from Judah, he pays no attention to you, which is false on the surface, because Darius was impressed by Daniel. Pays no attention to you or to your injunction, but makes his petition 3 times a day. So they set it up to try to denigrate Daniel and say, and he has failed your decree. All right? So set it up so that there's no way he can get out of it. Now 14 and 15. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, Now know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed. What a bunch of
Yeah, I would think the king could change his own.
Well, you think, but I mean, just the jerkiness of and reminding him several times, oh, you can't change your mind. Oh, you can't change your mind. It's like, Yeah, so we see that Darius is obviously, he likes Daniel. Whether it's professionally or personally, probably both. He holds him in high regard, and he's pretty upset. And so he tries to find and to his credit, and you can say, well, the king can do whatever, but, Darius, to his credit, is working within the constructs of his legal system. So it's not just, it's good to be the king. It's like, well, no, the king has to abide. Because what he's dealing with is he's saying, well, you know what? If I waffle here, if I say, no, it doesn't apply to him, then all I'm doing is saying like, oh, see, I don't mind when people ignore me. And he's a brand new kingdom for him. So he doesn't want to appear weak to his subjects. He's got to maintain order. He can't go back on what he said. And he tries to find some way around it that's not overtly like, I'm the king.
Right after that, he enacted the presidential pardon.
Possibly, yes.
That's kind of like John the Baptist getting his head chopped off. The
Kinda,
king
yeah.
didn't really want to do that either.
No, but he was definitely more, Herod was dealing more with, it wasn't necessarily like he was trying to find a solution. He was just like, well, I said it and I can't go back. He was kind of he wasn't exactly a paragon of virtue or like, oh, mighty king. He was kind of like, ugh.
His wife wanted it on a platter.
Well, yeah, his daughter.
Kept prodding him to
Yeah.
chop off his head.
All right, 16 to 18. We got this. We got 3 minutes. We got this. All right. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. So, he's forced to uphold the decree. Now notice what he says. He says, may your God, whom you continually serve, deliver you. So it's kind of like, hey, may your God deliver. Like he acknowledges Daniel's God, and he's sincerely hoping like, hey, may your God deliver you, because this is what I want, okay? Fun little thing is he notes that Daniel continually serves God. So in his own little way, whether he realizes it or not, he recognizes that Daniel is not serving him. He's saying, God, well, Daniel has served me loyally, but he's also continuously served his God. So the cool thing is that there's a nice little Lutheran doctrine of vocation going on here, where he kind of acknowledges, possibly unknowingly, that as Daniel renders his service as a loyal subject, he is also rendering that service to God. That the way he serves God is by serving Darius. Same thing that we do in all of our lives. So when not all of you can be clergy people, right? But you go and you fulfill your vocation. You go to whatever jobs you're at. You go to your home. You go to wherever, and those roles that you play in those places, that's how you serve God. You continue serving God by continuing to serve your fellow man. So Darius kind of throws in some nice Lutheran stuff in there. So go Darius, whether he realized it or not. So here's where we get Darius knows that something's a little screwy, because he seals the stone with his signet ring and then with the signets of all the lords. Basically so that he can't be accused of rescuing Daniel. Because everybody knows that, he likes Daniel, so no one can cast any aspersion on that. But he also doesn't trust those scumbags, because if he is delivered by his God, if the lions don't eat him, guess what they'll probably do? They'll go and kill Daniel. So they can't get him. So he doesn't trust him. So he's like, Darius is not a fool. He knows how things are going. So he sets it up. So he basically says, this is the cool thing. He's like, man cannot save you, Daniel. May your God save you. Which is kind of a cool little thing for him to do. This is not coming from necessarily a place of faith. We're not going to assume that Darius is a faithful person. Okay? He acknowledges God. Absolutely. So did Nebuchadnezzar. But at least he recognizes that Daniel's God is able to do something. Okay? So the cool thing is he acknowledges and he actually says, man, you're out of man's hand right now. Only your God can save you. Now, when Nebuchadnezzar said that, he was taunting Daniel. He's like, who is your God? Who you think your God can save you? Ha! And here, Darius is like, I hope your God saves you. Like, pray really hard in there, Daniel. Please, let your God save you. So kind of cool stuff going on there. Next slide, 19 through 23. We are almost there. Okay. Then at the break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him because he had trusted in his God. All right. So the cool thing is, Darius is very hopeful and acknowledges that God can save because he comes and calls out for Daniel. There's a possibility that he is saved. So he calls out like, oh, please, has your God saved you? Please answer me. And Daniel's like, yep, I'm good. And is, O king, live forever. See, he's still loyal, faithful. Yeah, nothing's changed. Now the cool thing, really cool thing. So he says, O Daniel, servant of the living God. Living God. I think he says, refers to God as the living God in verse 26 too. This is the only place in the entire Old Testament where a non-Israelite refers to God, Yahweh, as the living God. So it's kind of cool. Now, again, we're not sure if that denotes saving faith or not, but I'd say he's a heck of a lot closer to Nebuchadnezzar ever was. The fact that he calls him the living God, which also, even within that, is like an acknowledgement that your God can save you because he is God of the living. He's not these wooden idols, these stone idols, these worthless idols. So there is some kind of sense that, he acknowledges Yahweh in some sense greater than Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, because he pulled you out of the den, he's alive.
Well, yeah.
That'll kind of change your mind.
This other, man, we don't have time for this. Darn it. So Daniel points out two things. He says, I've been found blameless by God, right? I'm saved because why? I am blameless. God has found me blameless. God found me blameless. So, because God has found him to be righteous, he saves him. So saved by faith alone. Nice little thing here. But then also, so before God, he is blameless or righteous. Before you, O king, has no blame, right? There's a cool teaching that we have. Two kinds of righteousness that Daniel actually displays. We've got a passive righteousness before God. Okay, I've drawn this in the past where we've got this relationship between God and us, right? Okay? So before God, I am blameless. God regards you as righteous. This is your passive righteousness. Passive because you don't have anything to do. It is only the work of God. It is an arrow pointing straight down. This is your righteousness before God. Okay? Now before other people, we have a horizontal righteousness, right? This is what we call our active righteousness, or our sanctification, or good works. So when Daniel says, I've been found blameless before you, he says, I've been loyal. I haven't broken your law. I've done everything you expect of me. So God has found me righteous because of faith that he has given me, and I've been found righteous before you guys because I do what I'm supposed to do. I fulfill my vocation, right? We call, if you want to get really fun, Latin coram Deo, Latin coram mundo. This means we have a righteousness before God, and we have a righteousness before the world. Okay? It's just God sees this righteousness that nobody can see. It's his righteousness. Okay? The world sees only the righteousness that can be displayed in action. Okay? Nobody can see this, right? Like, you can't open up your, look, faith is in there somewhere. Like, no, you can't see it. Only God sees it. But the world can see your righteousness in that you do stuff, you serve people, you love them.
So being faithful to our vocation is really, really important.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally, yeah. So long as it doesn't conflict with God. Like the moment our vocation puts us at odds with God, then we say, well, no, I've got to obey God.
That would be his calling, his vocation for us to be in conflict with him. We should,
What do you mean?
if it's our vocation, it's our calling from God to do whatever.
Oh, you mean in conflict with this? Oh, I thought you meant conflict. I'm like, no, God wouldn't. Yeah, so our calling will put us at conflict sometimes in this regard. But even then we would say like, well, yeah, sanctification, so long as we're obeying God's law, first and foremost.
Paul had said earlier, the pure love and trust God above all things.
Right. Yes.
But it gets played out
Mhm.
horizontal
Yeah.
with the forum window.
Yes. And that's exactly what we get in Daniel. See, Daniel's a very Lutheran guy. Amazingly Lutheran. All right. Almost there. 2 more sections and we're good. We're only a little bit over. Are we still good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Because I'd hate to lead this over for 2 little sections. All right, next slide, 19 through 24. This is the fun one. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces.
Yeah, they didn't believe in the living God.
Exactly. So this is not an unusual thing in the ancient world that if you falsely accuse somebody of something, and the punishment for whatever you're accusing them of is like death by stoning, if you were found out to be falsely accusing them, guess what you got? Death by stoning. So the fact that, even Israel had this kind of law. So this is not unusual. Well, where Israel law stopped was, well, your family doesn't get sucked into it. Actually, that was forbidden. The law of Moses said the family, unless they're conspirators, do not get included. If you commit the crime, then that's you. So Darius throws in makes it a little bit harsh by throwing in the wives and the children too. But
And the wives.
yeah. So this was a common thing.
Did I read mother-in-laws in there too?
Family.
Well, family, yeah, household.
You got everybody.
But the fun thing there is that they would have known that this was the thing. This was if you falsely accuse somebody, but they were adamant, throw them into the lion's den. And the big thing was they say, and king, you can't change the decree. So now that the king decrees, you guys get thrown in. And actually the law says you guys get thrown in. So he's like, sorry fellas, can't do anything. My hands are tied.
What I was gonna say is, all those ones that petitioned against Daniel, he really did pray to God. So they didn't really lie. They were telling the truth to the king.
They said it.
Well, okay. True. So they did catch him doing that thing, but they did falsely accuse him of not being faithful to the king, about not regarding the king. So in a way, they did sort of give false witness to the king about Daniel's motivations and whatnot.
Manipulated the truth.
Right. So even if it was a case where maybe the false accusation wasn't the deal, he still decreed okay, you guys and your families into the lion's den, and there's no way he go back on it because that's the decree. So the lions are just shows the miraculous thing where he's in there all night and they're fine, and just they're barely tossed in and the lions are jumping up and that guy. See, there we go. All of that just to get to my awesome drawing there. Thank you, Mom, for those art lessons that you paid so much for. Finally, making use. All right, last section, verses 25 through 28. See, we got there. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Right, so reign of Darius and Cyrus the Persian, just link them all together. So he makes a decree, and this is different from Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was, he decreed that anybody who was caught blaspheming Daniel's God would be punished. So it was kind of a negative affirmation. Is that a thing? Negative affirmation?
It is now.
It is, thank you. All right. We've decreed it. Yes, okay, good. Darius, on the other hand, actually commands people to respect Yahweh. So it's a very positive aspect to that. This is not a gospel proclamation. He's not saying, and everybody shall have a loving relationship where they trust in God. He says, no, you will respect him, you honor him, you recognize that he is mighty, and he does awesome stuff. So it is very much law, but again, Darius is probably closer than a lot of other people that we can look back in Daniel. The cool thing about his proclamation here is he states some things about God. You know, the God of Daniel lives forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders. So all of this stuff is kind of like, you know, he does these things where people could say, well, you know, that's just you saying it. You know, we don't see it. But he wraps it all up by saying, like, in all these things, and he has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So he takes all this stuff that he says, this is the mighty, awesome God, and he has shown it in that he has saved Daniel, miraculously saved Daniel from the lions. So he takes it from, this is the theoretical into the very real, practical. This is this is where the rubber meets the road with this guy. All your other gods, it's a flip of the coin, and then you never know. They don't do anything. Okay? Daniel's God, the living God, actually, boom, made it happen. Delivered his servant. So it's kind of a nice thing where he makes it concrete for him. And it all becomes very, very real. Voilà. Any questions? Thoughts?
Did I understand you to say earlier that all of this was, Daniel was about 60 or so?
At this point, probably in his 70s, 80s. Yeah, older guy. And he was never put in charge of Babylon, that we know he wasn't promoted to that level. Don't know why. I mean, maybe the king changed his mind. Maybe he realized, hey, I like this guy. Maybe putting a target on his back is not the best way to deal with him, which would be feasible too.
Yeah, I just wanted to note in verse 21 where he says, "O king, live forever."
Yes.
That's probably like the first time, because they say that all the time in this book, but that's probably the first time anybody's actually meant it, like genuinely, like as a, because other times they're trying to butter up the king.
Oh,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
See, I think I'm not sure if he says it to Nebuchadnezzar. I don't remember. He definitely didn't say it to the previous guy. He did?
Well, no, but like all the Chaldeans and stuff talking to Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh yeah. They're just,
like,
that's just like, okay.
They're just trying to butter him up or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
in fact,
you know.
if you want to go there, I mean, if anybody, Daniel could be the one where, behind that, "O King, live forever" greeting would be the sincere, like, hey, and if you became if you believed in Yahweh, you would. With them, it's a very perfunctory, this is just what we do, this is our greeting, either to kiss up or whatever. When we say it, or Daniel says it, or if we were to say it, it would be backed by a sincere possibility and desire. So like, if we said, whoever, I don't want to upset anybody, I'm not going to use any politicians because that's just a minefield. Somebody, so-and-so live forever. They'd look at you weird. Try that tomorrow. Everyone you greet, say, "Oh, live forever," and be like, probably cut out a lot of unnecessary conversations in your day. But I mean, behind it would honestly be kind of like, yes, and we know how. We do. We can. So yeah, Daniel of all people is the only one in this book who means what he says and actually has it as a possibility. Yeah, that's actually a very, very good point.
Do we know if Daniel historically lived to leave Babylon when the exiles went back to Judah?
He was through the reign of Cyrus for a few years. Did he make it back? Oh, I'm spacing on that one. Ooh, I feel bad. I'm completely blanking. We'll fill it in next week. Yes. Brain. Cool. Any other questions, comments?
Don't erase your line.
Don't erase my line.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, we'll get a picture of it.
So, how did a guy like Methuselah live to be almost 1,000? It was, are those regular
That's
years?
good, healthy living right there.
Yeah, but you know what? I was reading in there, and I think there was a woman that lived like 912 years back.
Well, if you go back and the people early on lived long, and as time goes by, it gets shorter until we get to kind of where we're at now.
If you lived that long, you'd outlive family after family that you.
Well, not if they're living as long, but yeah.
Yeah, they'd be right behind, I mean, you'd have them all.
I mean, and really what we would look to as evidence of that would be just the effects of sin. How, sin enters the world like people, God creates Adam and Eve to live forever. Well, now death enters the equation, and from the moment they leave the garden, now they're dying. So lifespan, things happen, disease, ravages, everything breaking down. So the picture we get through Scripture is that, I mean, honestly, the world is very, very slowly getting to a point where it's going to be like, and we're done. Where things get just, God is like, okay, pull the plug.
That's when Jesus comes back
Right.
in the chariot on fire.
Yeah. It'll be fun.
Everybody can, yeah, it will.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. Ooh, I missed a comment. Sorry, Mom. I didn't see your comment. All right. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you. Absolutely. My pleasure. All right. We can go off.